Winter classes are available online from the 30th of June till 18th of July, from 17 o'clock to 19 o'clock, from Monday to Friday. Contact me for info.
What is this? Heritability, it's a probability, chances. So this one is probability or a proportion. Let me use probability, in which characteristics are determined by genes or genetic factors. More than one environmental factors. Let me add this. Environmental factors, or by environment. This one is a probability or the chances, or sometimes they say it's a proportion. Still, that's probability. In which characteristics are determined more by what? Genes than environment. Example. Now we are about a particular characteristic, eye color, and listen very carefully. Heritability of eye color is 80%. Second. Nice question. How much of this characteristic is determined by environment?
20%.
20%. Go back to the statement. Probability in which characteristics are determined by genes more than environment. So now what's heritability? 80% of is heritability of eye color. Shows this one is heritability. 80% is determined by genes. How much is determined by environment? 20. Now, let's explain. Let's interpret heritability. Now we have an heritability that is above 50%. We have heritability that is less than 50%. Heritability above and heritability less than. Listen very carefully. Is this heritability high or low?
High.
Huh?
High.
This one is a high heritability. What does it imply? This is the heritability that is recommended. When we select animals, when we select animal, ensure that you select animal with the highest heritability possible. You see the reason. What does it imply? There's greater, in simple English, there's more. No. This characteristic is determined. Is it determined by genes or environment?
Genes.
Above C,
Yes.
and job determined by genes, if a characteristic is determined by gene, there's high chances to see it more offspring.
Yes.
But if the characteristic is determined by the environment, there's less chance.
It's a trend. It's a trend. It's over.
Yes. Trends that the characteristic is passed on to offspring. But once heritability is low, show the characters are determined by what? By environment. That's an example. Now, animal in a 60% heritability is animal X. Animal Y, una 40% heritability. Which animal are you going to select for breeding purposes? Animal X. Because I've seen 60% of the characteristics determined by what? By genes. That's heritability. This is a high heritability. This one is determined by what? By genes. And there's high chances that it is passed on to offspring. That's why you recommend it. Le. I determine my genes.
Environment.
Determine my environment. Kusho today 40% genes. Like on characteristic Y. How much is determined by genes here?
60. How say?
The person becomes inheritability and inheritability determined by genes. 40% is genes, 60% is environment. Lana 60% is genes. Le person lebakunika lona, le environment abakuniki. Ngiyenzona? Sengibuta la lithi why? How much is determined by genes? How much is determined by environment? Therefore, this one is determined more by environment. And if this characteristic determining environment, I call it pass on to law. If the very complex gene, Lona who light skinned, yeah, who light skinned, no, not light skinned. Between X and Y, move loyalty and the characteristic that is X. Because it is determined more by what? By genes. Law 40% of the characteristics is genes, but 60% utelele. So that's how this heritability thing works. The percent that I'm going to give you will determine genes. Now what's the environment? Subtract 100 from the one that's given, then we get the environmental effect. Once heritability are high, we should see the characteristic is determined by what? Determined by what?
Genes.
Once heritability are low, the characteristic is determined by what?
Environment.
Environment. I want to show you something here. Then it's forward. What is required here is the understanding only. Now let us read. Then let's go to 8.
Animals are selected based on the records of their ancestors.
Let's read 8.
Animals are selected based on the records of their ancestors.
What method of selection is this?
Pedigree selection.
Let's read B.
Selection is based on the quality of relatives of its own generation.
Which one is this one?
Feminine selection.
Let's read C.
Farm animals are selected based on individual performance.
Which one is this one?
Mass
Let's read D.
selection is based on the quality of offspring.
Which one is this one?
Progeny.
Now, I want us to look at this one. The diagram shows heritability. Below is a table showing heritability of different characteristics. Let me just teach you something here. How many characters are we having here? 1,
2, 3.
the first one is,
Milk production.
the second one,
Eye color.
and then one.
Fleece weight.
What is the heritability of milk production?
40%.
What is the heritability of milk production?
40%.
Of eye color?
70%.
Of fleece weight?
20%.
Now I'm asking you, which characteristic are you going to select for breeding purpose?
Eye color.
Which one?
Eye color.
Why? It has
High percentage of heritability.
it has
High percentage of heritability.
very good. This characteristic is determined by what? Environment or genes? Huh?
Genes.
How much of this characteristic is determined by environment?
30%.
Simple like that. Which one are you not going to select for breeding purpose?
Fleece weight.
Why?
Because it has low percentage of heritability.
It has low percentage of heritability, ne?
Yes.
Okay. So, is fleece weight determined mainly by genes or environment?
Environment.
How much of this characteristic is determined by environment?
80%.
How much is determined by genes?
20%.
Therefore, there's less chance that this one is going to be passed on to offspring. Because it is determined less by genetic factors and more by what?
No.
How many characteristics are we having here?
3.
The first one is,
Birth weight.
the second one,
Post-winning gain.
the third one.
Lean meat.
Which one are you going to select for breeding purpose here?
Post-winning gain.
Post-winning gain, eh?
Yes.
How much of this characteristic is determined by environment?
40%.
How much is determined by genes?
60%.
So you see that there's greater chance that this one is passed on to offspring.
Yes.
Which one are you not going to select for breeding purpose?
Lean meat
Why?
has a low percentage of heritability.
Therefore, since how much of this characteristic is determined by genes? How much of this characteristic is determined by genes?
37%.
Therefore, it is determined less by genes, and more by what? Environment. Therefore, there's less chance that this one is passed on to offspring. That's why you do not recommend it. How many characters are we having here? 3, ne? The first one is? The second one? The third one?
Slaughter weight.
Which one are you going to select for breeding purpose?
Fleece weight.
This way, ne? How much of this characteristic is determined by environment?
68%.
How much of this characteristic is determined by environment?
32.
32. How much is determined by genes?
68.
Therefore, you can tell that this one is determined more by genes and less by environment. Therefore, there's greater chance that it is now passed on to. That's why you recommend it. Which one are you not going to recommend?
Slaughter weight.
Slaughter? Why?
Has low percentage.
This one is low, isn't it? So that's how we do the stage. We're going to do this one last. How many species are we having here? The first one? The second one? Now, which characteristic are you going to select for breeding purpose on a conspicuous species?
Meat tenderness.
Yes?
Meat tenderness.
How much of this characteristic meat tenderness is determined by environment? Huh?
35.
How much is determined by genes?
65.
Therefore, you can tell that meat tenderness is determined more by genes than environment. Therefore, we recommend it, isn't it? Which one are you not going to select? On Bonsmara?
Lean meat tenderness.
Yes? Post-wedding? How many percent? It's low. How much is determined by environment on post-wedding weight? How much is gene? Therefore, post-wedding weight is determined more by environment than what? Genes. Therefore, you can't recommend it. You see that? So this thing is very simple. Siyabuya. Kuno njani mayo? Kuno chole berbat. Terasi balik lagi.